to the Kung Fu Mama Show. So today we have Katie Corbett back on the show. She is a master's degree in community health education and is a certified health education specialist and a busy mom of 8 kids whom she homeschools. Hi, Katie. It's so great to have you back on the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun.
Yes, I'm having so much fun. I'm learning so much from you. I'm still wowed by how you manage all your 8 kids and homeschool them. But what you are also an expert in is how to lose weight. I mean, this is incredible. And I think my listeners really, really want to hear about this. So what are 3 things off the bat that my listeners can do right now to start losing weight?
Okay. So the first thing they should do, all the tips that I teach are based on research. So I had real quick backstory. I had struggled with my weight for about 30 years. And after I had my 7th baby, I was 70 pounds overweight, and I just didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. 5'1", and the thought of starting another diet, it was like, I can't do this because they just didn't work, right? I'd lose it a little bit, but then it would come right back on. And I was just so tired of worrying about it. And so I was like, I have this master's degree in health. I'm just going to research and figure out what to do. So all the tips that I give are based on the research that I found. I called it my year of grace. It's like, I'm not dieting. I can't. I just mentally couldn't do it anymore. And I started researching like what really works. And so I stumbled upon this concept of, and I learned this from Dr. Roger Gould, and he has an awesome book called Shrink Yourself. And it's basically, what he was saying is you basically have a biological stomach, but then you have an emotional stomach, and your brain has learned that anything that it doesn't want to deal with, like any kind of emotion or anything that your brain kind of realizes is like uncomfortable or unpleasant, it has learned that it will just tell you, hey, you're hungry, go eat something, because it knows you'll feel better. And if that to you is just normal, and especially like a yo-yo dieter, they've kind of lost touch with that part of themselves. They just assume if my brain's saying I'm hungry, and they'll believe it. Another word for it would be emotional intelligence, and they found that people who struggle with their weight or are overweight have low emotional intelligence because they're not really realizing they're having these emotions. They're just listening to the brain say, go eat. And so once I learned that, I was like, okay, so what do I do then? Like, how do I notice the emotion? So another thing I learned was that when you struggle with your weight, you probably are eating about 47% more than you actually realize you are. Okay, so it kind of comes under the umbrella of like mindless eating. So the first 3 things I have my clients do when I work with them is, and by the way, like when I learned this and started applying what I learned, I had lost 60 pounds and I didn't diet. I didn't deprive myself. I just learned the psychology behind it and finally understood like, oh, okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now because I've got 8 kids and, I feel guilty for feeling overwhelmed because I wanted this big family, and I like grabbing, handfuls of chocolate chips because that does make me feel better. But that's not really helping me with my weight loss. Like I was sabotaging myself, but I really didn't know another way to feel better. Right. So like I would learn this though. I was like, oh, okay, I'm not really hungry, even though I really the chocolate chips were irresistible. Like I didn't know how to not have them until I learned this. And I was like, I don't really need them. My brain is just saying you have to go have them because it knew that would help soothe me. Right. And your brain always wants to keep you happy and healthy and safe and do it in the quickest way possible. It's called these neural pathways. It develops these neural pathways, which are basically habits. And if you think about a habit, you can do it without really thinking. Right. And so these habits are created, and then eventually you feel like you can't help yourself. Like all of a sudden the bag of chips is gone, right? Like it's that kind of automatic reaction. So what I learned was when you're planning your goals or anything like long-term, you use a part of your brain called the prefrontal cortex. So what I have my clients do is write down, and so this is tip number 1, write down 24 hours ahead of time, whatever it is you want to eat for the following day. And you're in charge of your own food. So you can pick a food plan that makes you feel good. My only recommendation is like it nourishes you, it gives you the energy you need. And just try to keep it, like as fresh and nourishing as possible rather than processed foods. But you get to choose. So you're your own boss in this. And that's a huge part of the back end really is like building self-efficacy, building confidence in yourself that you are capable of doing this. And so we start out right away with write down what you're going to have 24 hours ahead of time and then stick to it. And that's like the hardest part really is the sticking to it, because the next day comes around and you want to rebel against yourself, right? And I think this comes up too. If you follow a diet plan, you want to automatically rebel against it. Like, I don't want to eat that, or I want this instead, right? Like you're planning it. So you're kind of needing to start learning how to be accountable to yourself and keep your word to yourself. Yeah. So when the next day comes and you have this food that you've planned for yourself, from your prefrontal cortex with your goals in mind and like the vision that you have for yourself of what you want to be. Right. And you have to stick to it. Right. And so what I have you do then, the next thing is I have you get a jar. It's just like a clear jar. And then like a little glass bead or like you can get them at a craft store, just like a bag of beads. Like there's about 100 of them, I would say. And every time you want to go against whatever it is you've written down, or you have a craving and it feels so irresistible, you give yourself a splash of joy. And then that is the tip number 2. Now that is based on research. It was called Surfing the Urge. And they based that on a smoking cessation workshop where they had smokers that were having the hardest time quitting smoking. And they said, if you can just wait a few minutes and kind of let the urge or the craving, just let it be there, like kind of just ride it. Don't answer it, but just sit there and let it, surf it, like ride the wave out. What they found was the smokers were able then to wean off of cigarettes and stop smoking. And so what you're doing is you're going to give yourself a splash of joy for every 10 minutes that you don't answer a craving. You don't give in and go against what you wrote down. You're going to keep your word to yourself. You're going to give yourself a splash of joy. And what that does is a couple of things. One, you're creating new neural pathways in your brain. You're teaching your brain, like, no, I'm in control. And just because I have a thought that, I need to eat, or I have to go do this to feel better, or, those chocolate chips are irresistible, you're teaching your brain another way to cope. Like it's not, you're not, every time you go against yourself, you're reinforcing the idea that you have to go eat something. Okay. When you can sit with the splashes of joy and not answer those cravings, you're training your brain like, yes, I can be effective. I can keep my word to myself. I don't have to eat this food. And you're creating new neural pathways of power inside your brain of like, I don't need to answer this emotion with food, or I don't need to answer this craving. Eventually the cravings will start to diminish because you're not answering them. But also that jar now, with every splash of joy you add, those are calories you haven't eaten. It's a visual reminder that you are in control, that you can resist, that you're not powerless. And really the feeling of powerlessness is really the root of a lot of the emotions and the drive to eat, because we feel like, we don't know what else to do except for eating, because eating is a very quick way to feel better.
So the splash of joy is just putting that bead into the jar. Yeah. Yeah. That is a splash of joy.
That's a splash of joy. And every time you do that, it represents you having control in your life. But once that jar is full, it'll take about 100 splashes of joy to kind of get this habit ingrained into you. But that jar then represents calories you didn't eat, confidence maybe you didn't believe you could actually do something and keep your word to yourself. And you've created a new neural pathway in your brain. Like, I don't have to just react and go eat something when my brain tells me to. Like, I'm in control. I have the power to be able to not answer that. Okay. And then the last thing I say is sit with those emotions. So while you're surfing the urge and using your splashes of joy, sit there and do some work inside. Like, why does this feel so hard for me? Or what am I feeling right now? Or what just happened prior to me having that craving? And try to find out, like, what emotion are you trying to avoid that may be unpleasant, or what situation is hard for you to deal with right now? Or what are you trying to maybe get away from by distracting yourself with food? And do that work. Because that is kind of like the secret sauce. Like, that's where the hard work of figuring out, like, how is food serving you? Because once you can figure that out and really kind of face whatever emotion it is that you were trying to avoid, it doesn't seem as big and scary. And then you can kind of start to come up with other ways to cope with those emotions. So for me, I realized 4:00 was like a hairy time of day. My husband works in New York City and we live in Pennsylvania. So he's gone about 15 hours a day. And I was feeling overwhelmed. And a friend of mine had finished an Ironman competition, which is an insane workout. It's a 2-something mile swim, 100 and something mile bike ride, and then a full marathon. It's like amazing. And it's a huge accomplishment. But after she finished it, we were rooting her on and following her progress. But when she was done, one of the first emotions I felt after feeling excited for her was jealousy. And I was like, wow, I'm not a jealous person. Why do I feel jealous about this? And it was because I wasn't making any time for my own self. And I was really jealous of the fact that she had time to do something for herself that was positive and healthy. So for me, 4:00 every day, I would feel overwhelmed, but then I'd feel bad for feeling overwhelmed, and I'd feel guilty. And so I'd go ahead and grab a handful of chocolate chips and then eat them. And then I would feel better. And then we could kind of continue on with our day. Well, once I learned this tool and this technique, I noticed the pattern. Like, 4:00 every day is really hard for me, but what else could I do that would support me in my goal of trying to lose weight? But like, those chocolate chips really feel irresistible. So what else could I do? And so I got to know myself and like, oh, I am a lifetime learner. I love research. I love learning new things. What if at 4:00 every day, almost no matter what, unless it's pouring rain or there's a blizzard, let's go outside and walk. The kids can play in the yard and I can just walk around and listen to a podcast. Then that speaks to me because I get to learn something new. I get to, blow the dust off. It's a natural way for me to decompress and get out in nature. We're in our yard, so I don't have to be, super hyper vigilant watching the kids and making sure that they're, worrying about traffic or any of that stuff. Like, they're okay. And I can really decompress a bit. And so I was like, I'm going to try that. So I came up with that strategy after learning that about myself. And it helped. It helped so much because that 4:00 chocolate chip habit, eventually, I don't even think about it now as like, oh, I have to have chocolate chips. It's 4:00, right? Like, it doesn't feel impossible now because I don't even think about it because I've trained a new pattern and a new habit. And even today, 4:00, we were outside walking, That's just, it's just like, that's just part of our day now. It's just a natural anchor now we have in our day for everybody to go outside, let's get some exercise.
So you say there are 5 pillars of weight loss. Those are some of them, I imagine?
The first thing would be, learning about yourself, right? Like, so the first pillar would be, start to notice where your habits, what are you doing, right? Like, how are you using food? As I always say, extra weight is just a indication of a life out of balance. And so if you can figure out what is out of balance and just work on that, the weight will almost take care of itself. And then you don't have to approach it by like white knuckling, deprivation, hitting the gym, doing boot camp, really punishing yourself because you feel like a failure or like there's some moral flaw with you. It's like, hey, let's just figure out like what's going on. Maybe there's something that's you're not feeling fulfilled with in life. And then you can go ahead and we'll work on that. And then you'll feel better about that, right? So then, and that kind of piggyback. So the next pillar would be, is keeping your word to yourself and building your self-efficacy. And so that is part of the whole concept too, is just this idea of, when you start a diet and then you don't complete it. And then you feel like, oh, I failed again. Like something is wrong with me. Like what am I doing wrong? Right. Like it kind of erodes the self-efficacy that you have. And so you're building that self-efficacy back up and you're starting to trust yourself and not feel so out of control. Then the third pillar would be getting to know your strengths. And so that you can go ahead and be able to develop strategies, come up with solutions to these issues that you're having that are proactive and that will support you in your weight loss. And then the next one would be finding ways to move your body that you love. So I think sometimes too, when people have issues with weight, they almost hate exercise as well because they've really only attached it to a diet mentality and to deprivation. Right. And they would punish themselves with it. And so, we try to get them to separate out exercise from weight loss completely and just say, let's find a way that you can move your body that feels good, just to get you moving again. But so like we do some work where it's like, when you were a child, was there something that you love to do that maybe you can do an essence of now? Like maybe you love ballet and, maybe you could take a dance class now, or maybe you loved being in the pool and swimming. Like maybe you could do that at a local gym now, or maybe you loved playing tennis, but what you really loved was being outside and being with a friend and doing something like that. So maybe you find a friend that you could be outside with, and maybe it's not tennis, but maybe it's just walking around, that kind of thing. So like find the essence of something that you really enjoy and do that. And like, so for me, when I started on this journey, I had just had my 7th baby and my core was not strong at all. So I started with a 20-second elbow plank. Like that was it. Like it was not epic. And that was hard. It felt impossible at first. Like I couldn't wait for that was the longest 20 seconds ever, but every day we do a little more and a little more. And then you build up to it. And then I discovered, I kind of like Pilates. I find them fun. And I like the idea of being strong without having to jump around. Like my body doesn't want to jump around. Like it's had 8 kids, like jumping hurts. So it's like finding a way to move that is beneficial, that suits you. So moving your body, but finding what works for you, not feeling like you have to, do these kickboxing boot camp things and really hurt yourself doing it. Right. Like
or do
something
Iron
pleasant.
Man.
What's that?
Or do Iron Man or something.
I know. I'm like, good for you. Yay. It's to each his own, but that was insane. And then the last thing would be just getting to know yourself. As far as I think a lot of times, especially this goes hand in hand with emotional intelligence. A lot of times, and especially for moms, we don't know, we may lose the essence of ourselves, or we don't really pay attention to what we like. So take time to, I call it university, right? Like, take time, like discover what color do you really like? What is a movie that you really like? What are hobbies and interests that you actually might want to take up and like fill your life with things that really light you up and give you purpose as opposed to just trying to get through the day. And so even in that too, it's like, when you struggle with your weight, you don't really want to dress your body, right? Like you just kind of put on whatever, maybe your bras have the underwire is cutting into you, or your underwear has holes in it, or stuff like this. You want to get new underwear, regardless of what size you are. Like just start appreciating and loving the body size that you are right now. and start treating it with compassion and respect, because when you do start to lose weight, you're still you. And you still are deserving of respect, no matter what your body size is. So, wearing underwear that fits, that don't have holes in them, bras that fit, wearing clothes that suit your personality and your taste and your style. Do that now, regardless of how you look. But it's a form of self-respect and it's a form of self-care. It's like you're worthy. And really, when you think about it, you're not going to take care of a body you hate. But you will take care of a body you respect. So you might not be at the point, especially if you struggle with your weight, you might be like, I hate how my body looks naked or whatever. You don't have to love it, but at least you could say, you know what, this is my body and it can do amazing things and it beats all by itself. Like I don't even need to think about having my heart beat or taking a breath or blinking and having my eye, like, wow, my body is amazing in that regard. And then just dressing it with respect and showing it a lot of grace and a lot of compassion so that it helps you want to take care of it. It helps you want to move it. It helps you want to keep your word to yourself. It helps you, want to do for it what it needs so that it can show up for you the way you want it to. So those are the 5 pillars.
Wonderful. So how do you find time to exercise when you have small children? So you found that thing that you really like to do. How do you actually do it, especially with 8 kids or with 2 kids?
Yeah. So you have to be intentional and you have to kind of look for pockets in your day where you feel like, okay, I can get this in. So when my guys were really little and I would nurse them, I always noticed around 10, my youngest guy would take a nap and then I could get in like a quick 30-minute Pilates workout. Now that I'm not breastfeeding anymore, I can get up a little earlier because I'm not getting up with a baby. I always say for the moms that have like babies and they're nursing and stuff, give your body the rest it needs. Don't feel like you have to, walk in the afternoon with the baby in a stroller, like do that as opposed to like get up early. Like right now, the season of life I'm in, I'm not getting up through the night with a baby, nursing it. So I'm getting decent sleep again. So for me to wake up at 5:30 isn't hard. And then I give myself an hour and a half, like usually 7. Some of my kids start getting up, but for the most part, they're kind of calm in the morning. They're not really needy. They're chill to just like hang out on the couch and just lay around. And I find like if I'm in the room with them, and I could just throw on a DVD workout or an app on my phone and do something while they're in the same room as me, I can get it done. And then I always know my 4:00 afternoon walk too, right? So I have kind of like 2 anchors in the day. So if I miss one, it's not like I haven't moved my body that day. But I also detached it from weight loss. So I don't consider like, oh, I have to work out because I have to lose weight. It's more like I like working out because I like how I feel when I'm done. I feel less stressed. I feel less anxious. I feel like I'm able to cope better with whatever's going to come up and whatever stress comes up throughout the day. I don't feel like I'm depleted emotionally. And studies back that up too. Like exercise really does benefit your mood. And so knowing that, it's like, why wouldn't I want to? I feel better doing it. So it's not from a place of punishment or like, oh, I have to do it right now because it's necessary. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, oh, I'm looking forward to it because I really need to decompress. Like I'm feeling kind of anxious kind of thing. And that helps so much. So I just find something I like and do that, and then, even if you're just starting out, like, oh, I don't really know if this is a good enough workout. Like if the best workout for you is one you'll do. So find something you like to do. Because if you're going to feel like you're white knuckling something, you're probably not going to be sticking with it or doing it anyway. So you might as well just start out with something you like and then maybe get adventurous and say, let me try this, but be willing to hate it or be terrible at it and fall over or whatever, like when you're first trying something new, give it a chance. And then if you don't like it, give yourself permission to be like, nah, this one's not for me. Let me try something else and be willing to fail at it and try it. And that's kind of part of your self-discovery too, is really getting to know what makes you tick, what lights you up, what do you find really draining? Like, who knows, maybe you will love kickboxing, right? Like
Right.
maybe that's something for you. It's like, wow, I love it because I get all this aggression and like it's so much fun. And I just have some,
Mhm.
like maybe that's fun for you, right?
Right.
And so it just depends on your personality. And
Mhm.
and to take into consideration, when you're starting, you might feel like, okay, I'm going to join a gym and I want to do this and that. And then, the time comes and like, you don't have any time in your day to actually go to the gym. But then you feel bad because you're wasting the gym membership.
Yeah.
I always say like, I know for me right now, a gym membership wouldn't work. It would take 20 minutes to get there and you'd probably want to work out for about an
Yeah.
hour, like, and then 20 minutes to get home. So it'd be about 2 hours after
So
you
don't
change.
force the issue.
Yeah. And I'm like, I
Right.
don't have time in my day for that,
Mhm.
So it's like, why would I do that? Like, I'd be wasting my money. But like, I know that because
Right.
I took stock and kind of counted the cost beforehand. And then I don't feel bad or feel like a failure because, man, I never even went to the gym, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's eliminated ahead of time, right?
Right.
So just find stuff that you can do that you'll be able to stick to that's reasonable and realistic.
Mhm. And then just the last question is, what's your favorite meal to prepare? Nutritious meal to prepare because you've got so many kiddos.
I love soups because they freeze well. I can make a lot of it all at once. I could put vegetables in it,
Mhm.
and people will still eat it. So I'd have to say like chilies. If I make a chili, I'll put in extra beans, and cut up some carrots and the tomatoes. And then also soup. So I like to make, let's see, my favorite soup would be, I like a mushroom and barley and beef soup. Any kind of soup. I think we're kind of like a soup family, but I also love the fact I can get more than one meal out of it and they
Right.
freeze really easy and defrost really quick. So soups are kind of my backup
I'm
plan.
just thinking about what your kitchen looks like. The storage for those soup. Like, do you have like those like industrial size soup pots for your 10 people?
We do. we do actually. We
Oh my
do.
gosh. So
Yeah.
you must just shop at those like cooking depots that actually are for restaurants, right?
We actually tried to do that, and you had to have a business license for a restaurant in order to go in. Like we did try though. We're like, oh, this would be great if we could do this, but we weren't a licensed restaurant, I think is what the criteria was. But we do shop at like the like a BJ's we have here,
Right.
which is like a
Like
warehouse store.
Costco.
Yeah, yep, it's just like that. And so we'll get the main staples there, but the fresh produce, like just yesterday, actually, there's a farmer's market
Nice.
where we are. And so peaches are in season right now. So I got a whole bunch of peaches and some bananas and grapes I got the other day and watermelon. And, so I like to get the fresh produce from the farm, but then we will get, like pantry items and stuff like that. We'll
Right.
buy that in bulk and have that on hand. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for telling us about your weight loss plan and really just having a healthy, healthy mental health and self-care routine to, keep that extra weight off. So, how can our listeners find you again?
Sure. You can head over to healthwellnessandchocolate.com.
Mm-hmm.
Also at Instagram at Health Wellness Chocolate. And then on Facebook, Health Wellness and Chocolate.
Okay, wonderful. And don't forget to subscribe to at Kung Fu Mama Show, Facebook, IG, and our YouTube channel at Starring Sarah Chang. Thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I loved this. Thank you so much for having me.
I love this too. I really want you to just like open the door. I'm like so curious of what's going on out there.
Back there?
Yeah.
It's just a bathroom.
Oh, okay. That's the bathroom. I thought
Sorry.
all the kids are gonna like come like bouncing out. Like
no, sorry. No, it's just a bathroom.
Oh my gosh. It was so nice to meet you. Yeah, it's so interesting. I love your lifestyle.